Welcome back to BNG Hockey, where it's always black and gold. When Tuukka Rask went down with his latest injury, fans and media started to speculate that he might just retire. But the team still seemed pretty optimistic, at least from the outside. They were giving us injury updates and saying that he'll be reevaluated in a week's time. They probably knew behind the scenes that it wasn't looking good, but I'm sure they wanted that decision to be fully up to Rask, and they didn't want to close the door on it until it had to be. Well, today, Rask came out and officially announced his retirement from the NHL. In this video, we're going to take a look at his amazing career as a Boston Bruin. I'll give you my thoughts on him retiring, and we'll also look at what it means for the Bruins moving forward. Before we look at his career stats, I want to look at his stats from this season. Even though it was a few games, I definitely think it's an important part on why he retired this year. In 4 games with the Boston Bruins, he had 2 wins, 2 losses, a goals against average of 4.28, and a save percentage of .844. Those numbers are way off from what we usually see from Tuukka Rask, and that tells us a couple of things. One, he was always getting up there in age, and his play was going to decline at some point. But this year, it's probably that the rehab didn't go as planned. That's clearly shown with him getting injured only 4 games into his NHL return, but he was also supposed to get a conditioning stint with the Providence Bruins. That didn't happen. They had a COVID problem, a couple of games got canceled, and instead he jumped into the NHL when he probably wasn't ready. But athletes don't like to stick around when they're not playing at the level they're used to. And Tuukka Rask, overall, has had elite numbers season after season after season. So looking at these numbers compared to his usual stats, you can see he's just not the same guy, and it was probably time to go. Now, don't let those stats fool you. Tuukka Rask has had an incredible NHL career that might even be enough to get him into the Hall of Fame. He played in 564 NHL games with 308 wins, making him the all-time winningest goaltender in Bruins history. He had 165 losses and 66 overtime losses. His stats overall are very impressive. His career goals against average is a 2.28, his career save percentage is a .921, and he had 52 shutouts. But the stats aren't the only thing going for him. He has a bronze medal, a 2-time All-Star, a Stanley Cup in the 2011 season, a Vezina in the 2013-14 season, and the Jennings Trophy in the 2019-20 season. So not only does he have the stats to make him a great goaltender, he has quite a bit of hardware to back that up. So now let's talk about what this retirement means for the Bruins moving forward. If you look at it one way, it doesn't mean anything, and let me explain. At the beginning of this offseason, we didn't know if Rask would be back. He was trying to get the surgery, he was trying to make it back, there was rumors of it, but we never really knew. And that's why I thought it was funny when people were bashing on the signing of Linus Ullmark, because they did that for this exact reason. Now, in fact, I was saying that it's dumb to have Ullmark when you could have just kept Vladar and Swayman, but clearly the Bruins weren't comfortable keeping the 2 young players, so I would much rather have them sign Linus Ullmark to go along with Jeremy Swayman so that if Rask doesn't work out, you're not just stuck with Swayman and Kaiser or Swayman and Vladar, so that makes sense, and I'm very glad that the Bruins did sign Ullmark because that exact reason did happen. Even though Rask came back, you didn't even know if it would work out once he got here, so Ullmark was kind of the safety valve there, and he's played pretty well overall. Now, we'd all much rather have a healthier Tuukka Rask, but as we saw with his stats in the 4 games, he's just not the same guy, and we weren't going to get that. So a tandem of Ullmark and Swayman will not be the worst thing, and in fact, it's kind of what they planned on at the beginning of this season. The Bruins also don't have to worry about any kind of cap penalties, the contract just comes off the books, so it's like it never happened, and that's kind of why this was a no-risk situation to begin with. Now, the Bruins are losing some depth in the goaltender position. Obviously, now Ullmark is likely your starter unless Swayman gets hot. Swayman is your backup, and you have guys in your minor league system that you could call up, but if it gets to them, it's a little shakier than obviously having Tuukka Rask as your 3rd-string goaltender. So the Bruins are going to miss that. They're definitely going to miss him in the room. He's clearly still a fan favorite with the guys, and a fan favorite here in Boston to some people. So I'm sure fans today aren't feeling as optimistic about the team, but as I said, you have to remember, Ullmark and Swayman were the plan all along if Rask couldn't come back, so it's kind of business as usual here. And we did have a little taste of Rask, but as we saw, it just wasn't the same, and I think the guys in the room have to realize that as well. And honestly, I gotta give credit to Tuukka Rask. He put in all that work, and he probably realizes too that he's not helping the team if he's playing like this, and he's not helping the team with depth reasons if he's gonna be in and out of the lineup with injuries all the time. So it's probably better off for both him and the team if he just retires. I want to finish this video off with my thoughts. Honestly, I realize that some fans think this, and I kind of think this myself. This all seems a little silly. The signing of Linus Ullmark when Rask was coming back, or is Rask not coming back, the will he, won't he talk, the sending down of Jeremy Swayman to the Providence Bruins, even though he was playing well, the talk of who the starter would be, who the guys want the starter to be, who the coach wants the starter to be, the reaction of the fans, the contracts being done, the sending up and down from Providence for Tuukka Rask, all of that stuff, all of that business, all of that noise, just for Rask to play in 4 games and then retire. But you know what? I give the Boston Bruins, and especially Tuukka Rask, a lot of credit just for trying it and sticking to the plan. Starting with the Bruins and Don Sweeney, I love the signing of Linus Ullmark, so no matter what, you had an NHL starter, whether Swayman was ready to go, whether Rask was ready to go, or neither of those things happened, you had Ullmark, and that's proving to be a solid choice. You stuck with Jeremy Swayman as your goalie of the future, and you told him that, hey, for now you might have to go down to Providence because it's the best thing for the team. But you're still our guy, and Swayman was in on that. And they brought back Tuukka Rask because they know how much he meant to the room, how much he meant to the organization, and how badly he wanted to be a Bruin. And it was solid logic. Rask played good last year even though he was injured. So coming back this year fully healthy, he should have been really good. But they also realize he's getting older, and sometimes these injuries pop back up. And that's why they structured the contract like they did, and that's why they planned ahead in case it didn't work out. So I give them a ton of credit to sticking to that plan. It would have been nice to have that extra depth, but I still think they'll be okay in net overall. I've definitely been hard on Tuukka Rask in the past, and plenty of fans here in Boston have. He'll probably go down as one of the most underappreciated Boston athletes of all time, when in reality he's probably the best Bruins goaltender of all time, and he might even end up in the Hall of Fame. So even though there's all this controversy around this player, what he did here in the end should make any Bruins fan have so much more respect for him. I know I respect him a lot more than I once did, and I probably always should have. I didn't realize how much the Bruins meant to this guy. What he did, getting the surgery, going through all the rehab, fighting so hard to only come back here, ignoring all the other teams, taking the ridiculously low contract from what he could have gotten on the open market to try and come back and do it. And even when he did come back and do it, to realize that he's just not up to his same elite level and that he's not ready to go and he's letting the team down and would probably be hurting them if he stuck around, to then retire, which is probably a better decision for his health and his family too, but also on the competitive side to know when it's time to go. I respect him so much for that. And like I said, trying this hard to come back and win with this team, for this city, for this franchise, should mean a lot to us. Things are not looking too good for the Bruins right now. It's sounding like Marchand's going to get a 6-game suspension. Bergeron just went down with injury, and all this retirement talk has me thinking about him being the next guy, and I am definitely not mentally prepared for Bergeron to retire, so I figured I'd warn you guys that that could be next, so you can start preparing for that as well. But without making this video too much about those other guys, going back to Tuukka, thank you so much for trying to come back this year. Thank you for all you've done for the Boston Bruins, even though myself probably didn't appreciate it from time to time, and Bruins fans as a whole probably didn't appreciate it from time to time. You're definitely a legendary Bruin. Wouldn't be too surprised to see 40 hanging in the rafters at some point, and thank you for trying so hard to come back. All the best in retirement, and hope you get healthy. Let me know your thoughts on Rask retiring down below. Do you think he'll make it to the Hall of Fame? Do you think the Bruins will retire his number? And what are your thoughts of him as a player overall? Leave that down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big like. And if you haven't already, subscribe.